Welcome to today's Explainer. We've got a fascinating and honestly a pretty urgent topic to unpack today. Okay, let's dive into this because we're looking at the actual mechanics of why a massive salary absolutely does not guarantee wealth. In fact, for a lot of people, earning a high income has become this direct, high-speed path to living completely broke, which sounds totally contradictory, right? You earn more so you can have more. But as we'll see, the math tells a completely different story.
41%. This stat comes directly from the Goldman Sachs 2025 Retirement Survey, and honestly, it's a number that should genuinely bother you. 41% of Americans pulling in between $300,000 and $500,000 a year are currently living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. $500,000 a year and zero financial buffer. Earning more doesn't automatically fix the hole in your financial bucket. A lot of the time, it literally just makes the bucket bigger.
And you know, it actually gets worse when we widen the lens a bit. If you drop that income threshold down to $100,000, the number of people running completely dry before their next deposit jumps to 48%. Nearly half of all six-figure earners are totally tapped out before payday. What this proves is that for a massive chunk of the population, the American dream has sort of quietly transformed into a mathematical trap. We're witnessing the rise of the high-income debt spiral, where the more you earn, the bigger your financial cage actually becomes.
Section 1. The high-income trap. Let's take a look at survival mode.
So the biggest misconception we really need to shatter right out of the gate is that wealth is just the number printed on your W-2. It's not. Wealth is actually the gap between what you earn, which is the flow, and what you spend. It's an incredibly simple concept, but it's so widely ignored. If that gap is zero, your income level is completely irrelevant. You could be earning 50 grand or 500 grand. If the gap doesn't exist, you are essentially broke.
Think of your financial life as this leaky bucket reality. Most high earners focus 100% of their energy on increasing the flow of water, right? They're chasing the promotion, the side hustle, the massive end-of-year bonus, but nobody ever tells you to count the holes in the bucket first. And we're not talking about holes from buying too many overpriced lattes. We're talking about structural holes. Because of these structural issues, 75% of six-figure earners have used a credit card in the last 90 days, specifically because they ran out of cash to cover fixed costs. They end up paying this brutal 21% interest tax just to stay afloat. And the result? We get what are called paper millionaires, people who look incredibly rich on paper but have absolutely zero liquidity.
Section 2. The financial vortex. Let's examine the macroeconomic forces at play here. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it humanizes the data. Meet Marcus. He's 38 years old, making $210,000 a year in a high-growth tech role. By every external metric, society considers Marcus to be rich. But Marcus is secretly drowning. He is trapped deep inside what that Goldman Sachs report officially defines as the financial vortex.
Let's break down the brutal math of this vortex. Since the year 2000, the cost of absolute basics, stuff like housing, healthcare, childcare, has risen 2 to 3 times faster than wages. See, Marcus isn't out there blowing his cash on yachts or private jets. He's just trying to survive a baseline that has become aggressively predatory. His housing costs? They've jumped from taking up 21% of his income to a massive 36%. His family healthcare coverage now just eats 33% of his paycheck right off the top. The structural holes in his bucket are absolutely massive.
Section 3. The psychology of reference drift. Let's talk about the psychological bug in the system. Okay, so here's the definition of the core mental model driving all this behavior. Reference drift. It's essentially a psychological bug. When you get an upward shift in your income, it automatically shifts your comparison group upward too, which instantly resets your mental baseline for what feels poor. The literal moment Marcus gets a raise, he moves to a nicer neighborhood, and suddenly he's comparing himself to much wealthier neighbors. So despite actually earning in the top 10% nationally, this psychological bug makes him feel like he's constantly falling behind. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how that plays out. In Marcus's new neighborhood, a $65,000 Ford F-150 is suddenly considered the budget vehicle. His brain doesn't even register his objectively high salary anymore. It only sees the gap between him and his new, flashier peers. The really painful irony here is that earning more doesn't fix a behavioral problem. Scaling your income just makes the consequences of reference drift significantly more expensive.
Section 4. The comfort premium. We're looking at the 1% tax.
While high earners are super distracted by rising living costs and trying to keep up with the Joneses, they completely ignore this very simple question. What does a 1% advisory fee actually cost? I mean, it sounds so small, right? Just 1%. It feels like a completely reasonable comfort premium to pay for having a nice, reassuring voice on the phone managing your portfolio.
But when you actually sit down and run the math, that tiny little 1% fee balloons into this staggering number, $170,000.
Let me explain exactly where that massive number comes from. A 1% annual fee on a $200,000 portfolio costs you roughly $170,000 in lost compounding over 30 years. By ignoring this specific structural hole, you are quite literally working extra years of your life just to finance your financial advisor's retirement, instead of your own. Wild, right?
Section 5. Breaking the debt spiral. Let's find the exit code.
Let's move to and see how this builds into an actual game plan. To stop the high-income debt spiral, there are 3 precise, actionable steps you need to take in the next 48 hours. Define your denominator, audit the logo tax, and route the raise.
Step 1 is to define your denominator. You need to sit down and calculate what your life costs if every single expense was an active choice rather than just a default habit. Why? Because of this underlying math right here. Every $1,000 of unnecessary monthly spending requires an extra $300,000 in your investment portfolio to sustain it in retirement. Those small, thoughtless monthly luxuries, they carry a massive, hidden portfolio burden.
Step 2. Audit the logo tax. I want you to do a reference audit to clearly determine what you're buying for status versus what you're buying for actual utility. Stop paying a premium for the new car smell or those name-brand groceries that are literally manufactured in the exact same factories as the store brands. The source data is clear on this. Making this simple switch saves the average household $2,500 a year.
Step 3. Route the raise. So the crucial point is, the absolute second you get a raise, you send at least 50% of it directly to your investments before it ever even hits your checking account. If you hide the money from yourself, you can never financially adapt to it. You effectively bypass that ancient reference drift bug entirely.
I want to leave you with this really powerful summary quote from our source material today. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. Stop watching the Joneses and start watching the Gap. Because that's the truth. Wealth is built through boring, methodical consistency. It's about aggressively managing that gap between your income and your expenses, not chasing status or whatever the latest trend is.
So look at your own financial reality today and ask yourself honestly, are you building actual wealth or are you just working overtime to finance a bigger cage? It's a heavy question for sure, but answering it is truly the only way to finally break the spiral. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this helps you rethink the way you manage your gap.